So in Finest, I worked for 4 years in Finest, and I worked in four different stores in Finest. I started out in the Seagrid store, and I worked in the Red Bank store. I worked in the Atlantic Highlands store, and then I eventually ended up in the Howell store, which um, was the last store that I worked in for them when they were sold to Foodtown. And the Seagrid store was a fun store. I had a lot of nice people. I met a lot of nice people, and it's where I started to groom myself to become what I became. I prided myself in being the best at what I did, and I had the best looking aisle in the store. We didn't work with night crews back in those days. The store, at its high point, did $100,000 in a week, which was decent money back in those days, but nothing like what some supermarkets do now. Um, there was a nice bar around the corner. You go there every day for lunch, have a burger, a couple of beers, go back, do your work. It was a beautiful thing. Um, the Red Bank store was a different animal altogether, but it was a nice store. It had a liquor store in it, so I guess that's where I started to learn my fondness for beers and um, the having them easily accessible at all times. Um, when I worked in the Atlantic Highlands store, it was in 1976, and that was during the bicentennial, and they expected over 1 million people to come down to the Atlantic Highlands area to see the tall ships coming into New York Harbor, and what a bust that was. You know, I ended up staying in the store overnight, expecting that I wasn't going to be able to get there because of the crowd of people. They put porta johns in the parking lot, and they were expecting so much. We had so much help on to take care of the customers that it just never came. I think they all got scared away because everybody was saying Route 36 in Atlantic Islands was going to be basically closed and you weren't going to be able to move. And it scared the death out of them. And but it was a good 4 years working for Finest. When we were in I was in the Howell store at the end of that career for Finest, and Finest decided to sell all their stores in New Jersey and go back to where they were strong in New England. So they sold them to Foodtown, and there was an adventure closing the Howell store. I have to tell you, I had a store manager that was unique, unique, and it was a difficult thing to see on some of the things that happened there. You know, we were closing the store, so we had to sell all the product out and get ready for the new owners to come in and take over and bring in all their products and set up the store. And I mean, for example, I would go home. There would be a Goya aisle. You know, the entire length of the aisle, 65 feet, was Goya. It was in an area where people bought that. And I come in the next morning, and there wasn't any Goya. There wasn't anything on the shelf. We didn't have a night crew. Where did all this stuff go? Another time, a couple days later, the coffee aisle, because we were discounting prices and selling things off, but come in, the coffee aisle's gone too. It was there when I left. And then I found out that the store manager was making a little bit of money on the side. But those are the kind of things that happen, you know, when you work for unscrupulous people. But that was quite interesting to see that things like that happen, because I was a very naive person at that young age and didn't realize that kind of stuff could really happen, and did happen, and happened a lot. And then I went on to start my career as an employee working for Mayfair Foodtown, which I worked for them for about 20 years, and that was a good time. That was a good time. I worked in a lot of different stores in Foodtown. And but I started out in the Howell store as a dairy manager. They wanted me as a dairy manager there, and I didn't know anything about dairy, so it took me a little while to learn about dairy, about a year. And then I became one of the best dairy managers that they had.